Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, personal development coach, HeartMath practitioner, dog photographer, and entrepreneur. In this podcast, I share tools, strategies, and amazing guest interviews to help you improve your mindset and your well-being with a sprinkle of fun and probably some mention of dogs along the way. So without further ado, let's squeeze the day. Before we jump into today's episode, I'm looking for a handful of people who can beta test a new coaching package I'm offering. I work with people who are stuck in their lives or careers and would like support in making changes, as well as people who battle with the effects of stress and anxiety. If you feel you would benefit from some coaching, which I'm going to offer at a 50% discount for my beta testers, please send me a DM on Instagram at Emma O'Brien Coach and we can arrange a time to chat. Hi folks, welcome to episode 19 of the podcast. Today my guest is fellow podcaster Lion Fludd, and we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. But first, a little bit about Lion. Lion is a passionate podcast host who is aiming to transform the game through providing powerful and positive stories of his culture. Lion was raised in a diverse environment that inspired him to make a difference in the world. He graduated with honours from the School of Hard Knocks and then committed himself to making a generational impact through his knowledge, wit, and storytelling ability. At the early stages of his career, Lion began his military career that would shape a world unknown to him, but it didn't take long for him to discover podcasting and see how he could use it to share his culture stories with the world. After that, he went to work creating content that was filled with life lessons and thought-provoking discussions. Lion Fludd is now one of the most successful voices on the podcast scene, and through his podcast, Lion strives to create a safe environment to be a little dangerous for community members from all walks of life to engage in conversations that spark change. Welcome to the podcast, Lion.
Yes. Thank you for that. I appreciate it so much. I love it. Lemons and pineapples.
Thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. And we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome, which I think as a creative person, I can relate to that. As somebody who is relatively new to the podcasting game, I can relate to that. I think many people can relate to this feeling of not being enough and our inner chatter. But I would like to know what imposter syndrome means for you. What comes up when you think about that and how it's affected your life?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's such a good question. And what's so funny, and then I'll kind of dive into answering that, is for a while, I didn't know what imposter syndrome was, right? And maybe they just created the word actually a few years ago. So when I was coming up, I don't think I've ever heard that word. It could have been around. But for me, imposter syndrome meant that I didn't feel as though what the information that I was giving out, people wanted to receive. Even though I was top-notch in that field, even though I knew about it, I knew everything that I was talking about, I still felt that people didn't want to receive it. And so that's what it meant for me when I first found out about it.
Okay. And I think that's very interesting. And it's something that's very relevant, I think, in a podcasting space. And it's something I know I can relate to, having questioned, does anybody want to hear what I've got to say? Do I have enough knowledge to share with people? And I think obviously for me and for you, the voice of doubt of, do people want to receive what I've got to say? Is it valid? That didn't manage to override the desire to get out and start a podcast and put yourself out there. I don't think it makes it any less scary. It's almost you feel the fear and go for it anyway and kind of white knuckle it. How else has it shown up in life for you?
Yeah, that for me also, it came into when my child, right? I felt as though, who am I to be a parent? I didn't get a manual or a booklet to tell me exactly the things to do. And then I started to realize, because here's the one thing that I would say, and I think this also goes into a culturistic point, right? Being raised in a different culture than with most. In the Black community, we are raised in a totally different manner as caring, for men especially. If I was to cut my knee and scrape and fall, we're raised as to just get up, don't cry, right? So I was raised in that kind of manner. And then when I started going into my fatherhood, I always would say, and then I started hearing people say this, I want to give my child everything that I never had. And for a long time, I thought the same thing. But in imposter syndrome, it kind of felt like I was raised in a way that I did not want to be raised. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to my child because it's just what I know. And then it was some moment it hit me. And I said, no, I don't want to give him everything that I never had, because that brought me to who I am. So it made me strong. It made me, and I want to do changes, yes. But what I want to do is I want to teach him everything I was never taught. And it made such a big difference when I started looking at it that way, because I got to be able to get closer to him. So in my family life, that made my son, my wife a lot closer because I opened up. I was a person that could never tell them I loved them because I never heard it when I was growing up. I couldn't give you a hug. I wasn't affectionate. And I made a conscious choice that I was going to change that imposter syndrome mindset. And I said, I'm going to start hugging my wife every day for 30 seconds. A big, deep hug. I don't care how awkward it is. I'm not going to say a word. And then it started off with one day. And then it started off with 2 days. And it just kept growing. And so I think that's how over that imposter syndrome mindset helped me out in my life with my family.
Yeah. So what I hear from you, it was about acknowledging that your childhood, perhaps you'd have liked things to be a little bit different, but also acknowledging that it made you the person you are. So perhaps it wasn't completely terrible and your parents didn't get it all wrong. But there were changes that you wanted to make, and it was tiny habits, this piece of just doing something very small and very manageable to slowly shift it. Because I think imposter syndrome is something that can be very hard to shake loose. I don't think it's something that ever goes away, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's because it's ingrained in us so much by societal norms that we get it. It's putting us as a kid that we're supposed to have this big wedding and this big, and we're not. We're supposed to do what makes us feel good. If I don't get the size of the ring that Cinderella said I'm supposed to get, then no, it's what makes you feel good. And when you have it for so long, 20, 30, 40 years, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's hard to shake. And one of the easiest ways to start the process is by those micro goals, right? The small little goals. If you want to walk for a mile, don't get out there and just start it. Set a goal. Say, I want to walk for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That's it. Every day, 5 minutes. 3 days a week, 5 minutes. And it eventually turns into 10 minutes. And you slowly start to break that habit of telling yourself that you can do it. And it's so funny because my wife, we would always joke, I made a song about myself, and that helped me to kind of start getting over that process when I was in my depression modes, in essence.
Okay. Say a bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that, especially, again, I go back into a culturistic thing. It's one of those things in Black culture. We do not talk about mental health. I was a kid, and I didn't find this out until later on in life, and it really affected me. When I was a kid, that I'm still undiagnosed with ADHD, but I know I pretty much have it because my son has it, and we've had him tested and everything. And they always say at least one parent has it, and I jokingly say, "Well, that's my wife," but it's me.
Of course, it is.
So but I can never finish anything. When I started in college, I went and I literally had 3 credits left, and my aunt to this day will remind me, and I dropped out because I my brain was just like I couldn't do it. So and I didn't know, but I didn't understand that there was something going on chemically in my brain, right? And I just always thought I could never finish anything. I could never do anything. So I got depressed and I didn't want to do anything. But then my brain was like, you need to do something. That's ADHD brain. We go, oh, squirrel. Okay, let me get back to this presentation. We go. So, and I had to learn those steps. I had to open up and say, it's okay to not be okay. I had to say, I need help. And within that came strategic placements of things for me to do in order for me to slow down and accomplish goals. But it started with me saying, I want to get out of this depression. I wanted to get out of this hole. I didn't know how, but I knew I wanted. And if my desire to accomplish it was stronger than my desire to fail, then I could get it. And that's a saying I say all the time. People don't get that sometimes. I say your desire to succeed has to be stronger than your desire to fail. I don't want to fail. Okay. So.
Yes, and I think that's a really good reminder that you shared there. And I think I remember hearing something similar from Tony Robbins, is that the pleasure you want has to outweigh the pain you are in order for you to move in one direction, or the pain you are in has to be so great that you want to, that it drives you to get out of it, to go in a different direction. But there has to be a motivator of some description. You have to want to be somewhere else more than you want to be stuck in your comfort zone. I'm using air quotes, folks, here, because depression is not a comfort zone. But when we talk about it being a zone of familiarity, which I think it can be easy to get stuck there because it's difficult to know how you're going to get out of it. One thing I wanted to ask you that you mentioned earlier was talking about when you were growing up, there were things that you felt you were supposed to do that you didn't want to do, and the imposter syndrome came through for you with that of I'm supposed to be doing this, but I want to be doing something else that actually makes me happy. Could you give me an example of what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so a kind of a little quick backstory that will lead into the answers so people will understand more of what I say with that. So I lived a very, and when I say this, it comes in 2 ways. I live a very traumatic life as a kid. And I know a lot of people do. And so I don't compare what I did to anyone else's. And I know in form or fashion, I'm trying to put that out there. But in essence of what that happened to me is I grew up poor, very poor. Then it was a big shift in which I grew up rich because my parents, my grandfather got in a bad accident. And that's who I grew up with. Eventually, they adopted me in that kind of form. So I had that traumatic experience. But he got into an accident, and then he received a settlement of $1 million.
Wow.
So we went from poor to rich. 9 cars in the yard. They bought, because they had 9 kids, we bought all kind of stuff. But we didn't know how to manage money. Because if you're poor and you get that big much money, you just start spending it. You don't know how to do it. So, and it was and some people say, well, how can that be a traumatic thing for you if you had money? Because I didn't have love. I never heard the word I love you or got hugs as a kid. Mm-hmm. And to this day, my son will tell you, I always say to him, money, I said, money matters. Make memories over money. Excuse me. I always say to him, memories over money. Because I want you to be 40 years old telling your kid, my dad and I used to go to this lake. My mom used to take me here, share those memories. And so as that kid, that imposter syndrome, I grew up in a world where I wasn't accepted by the white culture. I wasn't accepted by the black culture because all of a sudden I had money and I dressed good and then I talked properly, and black culture was like, no. But then I went to the white culture and the white culture was like, you're not part of us. Because I was still in that era of where there was the undercover racism and some things. So I didn't know where I fit in at. So my imposter syndrome was even crazier because I didn't know who wanted me. So I was like, you know what? I got to do what makes me happy. I can't follow the family business in a line because it used to be a longshoreman where they worked on their ships and they made good money, but one of the those shipping containers fell and it crushed his leg, and so that's kind of how that happened. But I didn't want to do that. Everyone else did that in our family, right? Everyone else followed that. But I was such a dreamer. I was like, I've got to do something different in this world, even if it doesn't make someone else happy. And then I created this thing that I call to this day the 3 Fs. Sometimes you can add a 4 in. I didn't know what it was then, but I named it later. It's called the 3 Fs. If you don't fit in my 3 F category, then you don't dictate my happiness, right? And the 3 Fs are simple. If you're not feeding me, if you're not financing me, and if you're not fornicating with me, then I don't care what you did. And that helped me out when I finally got to that point where I was like, I'm going to make my circle so small that only the people that mattered to me are the people I'm going to work with to help me get out of believing that my words don't matter.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I think it's takes a strength of character and quite a lot of mindset work to get to that place where we're not worrying about, we're not making our happiness dependent on external people who really don't matter fundamentally. What's the 4th F, dare I ask?
Family. But that's occasional because they can still, they can still kind of get under your skin. So that's why I keep that last F with the slash, //
last F. Yes, but I think that's great, and it's having those. And this is something that's come up in a lot of these discussions. It's a piece about having boundaries.
Yeah.
Of who do you allow into your circle? Who do you allow to affect what's happening in your head, how you're feeling? And who do you just keep outside and say, yeah, you might be there, but I'm not really that fazed by what you do or don't have to say about me. And it sounds like you had a tough time in not really fitting in anywhere. And that's hard.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, kind of going back to what you just said, that amplifies it is you have to be a strong-minded soul to be able to say to someone, no. And I say this when I'm working with my clients, I'm coaching, and I say one of the strongest words that you can learn, or word that you can learn, is no.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Nothing else behind it, right?
Yes.
Because, and it's so crazy, and I know some of the listeners may not be able to see this, but I have this button on my desk, and it's a button that says no. It says
what happens if you press it?
It has 100 different ways. No. It has 100 different ways of saying no, right? And so I would jokingly be in the office, and somebody would come and ask me something, I would just press it. Right, because sometimes you don't want to say no to someone because it makes you feel awkward, and I would just press the button, and it's so funny. But right, you get to that point where you start to learn that my peace is more important than your want.
Yep.
Right? Someone says, can you take me to the grocery store? No. But innately, us as humans that we've been taught by society, we feel we must follow that up with the reason of why, only because I still want you to like me.
Yes.
So that means you liking me is more important than me not wanting to go out in the hot sun or in the rain or something. I just don't feel like taking you. I don't need to give you a reason why.
Yes.
No, hey, can you come out with us tonight? We're going out for a girls' night or a guys' night. No.
Yeah.
And that's it. But we feel like, I got to say something else. I got to tell them, I got to make up a lie. I got to make up an excuse. No, because I got to be at work for work early in the morning. No, I just don't want.
So powerful.
Word.
It is such a powerful word, and it's just I find it's so funny and serendipitous that we're having this bit of a discussion, because I've literally come off a coaching call with a client, and she's an overwhelmed client, and I said to her, where in life can you say no to people? And we started having a look, and she said, oh, I don't really feel like I can, and we're talking through, and she said, oh, I can say no, and I can tell them this. And exactly what you've said. I said, sometimes you can just say no. You don't actually need to qualify. No, I can't help you. But we feel the need, don't we, to say, I can't help you because I've got too much on, or what have you. And I said, the only time you can qualify it is if there's something you absolutely have to do, but you can't do all of it and you need somebody else to help you with it. No, I can't do it right now. I can do it when I've had X, Y, and Z from you. You can ask for a bit of help with that. But I think, again, I just love what you've said about sometimes it's okay to say no because you don't want to. It's okay.
It's simple as that. Your peace, but you got to find, like you said, your boundaries, right? You have to set those and understand, but you have to set those for yourself.
Yes.
Right? You have to say, this is where my limit is. Like I do that when, I have maybe potential people wanting to work with me or clients, and they'll come in and they'll ask me some questions, and I know my limit of maybe 2 to 3 questions that I'm going to answer to kind of show you that I'm knowledgeable, that I know what I'm doing. But you can tell the ones who just trying to get the free information. I get it. But after a certain point, I just send you a link for my payment. Yes. I don't need to tell you anything else. I simply send you a link. And they go, what is that? You know what it is. I don't even need to explain it to you. You know exactly why I'm sending it to you. You want to work with me further. You want more information. Here's my link. Sign up. Pay me. Right? Yes. There's nothing wrong with that. I've given you free information. I'm open to helping. I'm open to work with you. But you're not going to take advantage of me. That's my boundary. And people will do it. You don't think they will, but they will. So get those boundaries. No.
Absolutely. What's springing into my mind right now while you're talking about this is the line from the Khalees song of I could teach you, but I'd have to charge. We need one of those buttons somewhere.
Yes.
But it's so true. And I think it's these boundaries are so important. And I'm thrilled that you've brought this piece up, because I think this is just so valuable for people to understand and to learn to be okay with. Again, this is where the imposter comes up, because it'll sit there and say, you should feel, or you'll feel guilty if you say no. So just say yes. Like you've said, why do we say yes when we don't want to? Because we feel we should, because we feel we're going to disappoint someone, because we feel someone's going to be angry with us, like you said, because we feel they won't like us anymore. And your peace has to come first. One of the things that I sit with now, because I'm this is also something I'm working on at the moment, am I saying no boundaries, is if I say yes to this, am I going to be resentful about it? And if my answer is yes, then I'm going to take the short-term guilt feeling of saying no.
It's that's powerful there. And even in different aspects of the world, I feel it's because being in the service, I've traveled, I've seen so many different things and places. And one of the big things that I do, I have this thing what I call the morning mindset reset, right? I get on a online live and I just talk about, hey, let's try to change a few things in our mindset. And so lately I've been on this tangent, if you will, about tipping that happens here in the US. I know it doesn't happen a lot of other places. I think we're one of the few countries that we put this onus on the customer that it's your job to tip the server. We have to give them money because they get paid so little, right? And so many people will feel bad because I can't give you a tip, or the server gets mad because you didn't give them enough of tip, right? But I'm a proponent of, like, let's start it. Let's start this debate. Come on. But I say no, because it's the company's job to pay the server a living wage, or a wage in which it's not the customer's job. But if you don't leave a tip, they feel guilty.
Yes.
So I can't give you enough money Why? What other place do we say it's your job? That's your job, and then I'm supposed to pay you for your job. But that's just one thing, right? Like you said, is that for a moment guiltiness of I said no, I'm not able to do it, so I feel bad. So then you put stress on yourself, and now you're going down a whole rabbit hole, and the stress affects your body and it affects your mind. Say, sorry, not happening. Not
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in America, you guys are expected to give a pretty sizable tip, aren't you, to servers in restaurants?
Yes. And really quick. And so the one differential that I state that kind of opened people's minds up a little bit, because the one thing people will say is that, well, we're giving them extra money because they don't make enough, right? So we're tipping them on their service. If their service is good, I want to give them more money. If their service isn't as up to par, I want to give them a little bit less money, right? But here's the truth in it. You're not tipping on a service, because then the company or the industry would leave it up to you. They suggest the amount that you should tip. And that suggestion, hear me, ladies and gentlemen who are listening to this, especially if you're coming to the US or in the US, it is based on the total of the food service or the payment of the bill, because they will suggest 20% for an example, which means that if I order just a sandwich and you brought me that sandwich, and that sandwich is $10, 10 pounds, 10 quids. I still don't understand pounds and quids, but
same.
Okay.
It's the same thing.
So, right. So like so then now I'm supposed to give you 20% of that $10. If I order a steak that's, let's just say $100 steak, my tip goes up 20% of $100. Yeah. Your work was the same. All you did is took the order, bring it to me, a sandwich. You took the order, brought it to me, a steak, but I'm giving you more money based on the amount of order, not your service.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a sizable amount that you're supposed to give on top of the bill, sometimes 15, 20 extra dollars.
Yeah. No,
it's crazy.
You take your no button to the restaurant with you.
That's a yes. I'm giving a yes to that one.
You could do that and then post a video on your Instagram. I will share it to mine because I think that would be highly entertaining. See how quickly you get kicked out of a restaurant. So my last question for you, coming back to the imposter syndrome piece and coming back to your son who is like you has got ADHD. And you said that you initially thought you were going to parent almost the opposite to the way you were parented. But I gather from what we've said, that isn't the case. How have you parented in the same way you were parented? Is my first part of the question, because I'm interested to know what you've done to pull out the good bits of the parenting you got, and how have you parented differently?
Yeah, wow, I love that question. So let's go with the start the first one of parenting the same. When I sit back and I think about it, I would probably say that you know what? Now that I think I was going to answer that in a way of safety, but I think the reason why I say that is because we grew up in a rough neighborhood where there was tons of violence, so we were always looking over our shoulder, always triple locking the doors and stuff like that. And in some ways, I still do that, even though we've worked so smartly. I don't say hardly. We work smartly to give our son a different lifestyle. So we live in a very different, wealthy neighborhood, all that, type of thing. And I'm never ashamed of saying that. People are like, you're ashamed because you make money. No, I work to put it to that point where I don't need to feel that way. But I'm still on him about safety. So I think that's part of it, but just in a different way. I'm on him on a safety factor because his ADHD is such a different way of mine. And again, I'm still undiagnosed, But mine was, so I was very, very smart as a kid. And I didn't notice at the time. I had an IQ of 152. But I did not know. I used to speak 6 different languages and so forth. And I think that's another reason why I wasn't accepted in both of the cultures at the time, because I wasn't I was great grades, I was straight A's, but that wasn't the other same part of the community. Most kids struggled with learning, whereas I could be sleeping in class and they would call my name and I would wake up and answer the question, right? So, but with him, he is so caring. And for me, that's a scary thing in the world because I understand how the world is sometimes. Everyone is his friend. He meets someone and they are his friend. I asked him one day, we were trying to teach and said, hey, what are you going to do if a stranger comes up to you in a van and tells you that, your mom's looking for you? And he said, well, I'll take them to the house and then I'll let them in with the code so that they can use the phone and try to call mom. And he's 9. A 9-year-old should not, and so I'm just like, no, son, no. So it's teaching in the same way of safety as I grew up, but just in a different manner, because we don't see as much violence, and it scares me because since I saw violence as a kid, I was aware when I went to the mall or when I went out. I was always looking. He doesn't see it. So when we want to travel with him, we want to take him to Disneyland, he will go off without telling us, hey, I want to go over to this food stand. He'll just leave and I'm looking for him. And I'm like, where's my son? So that's one way of still teaching him what I grew up in and maybe teaching him differently. And this is what I love the most is we allow him to express himself. We allow him to talk. And I think the bond is stronger. I could never tell my parents how I felt. I could never tell them I had a rough day, right? Because it was just get over it. We got to get to work. And I understood that. And I don't, even to this day, and I tell people in the world, I don't blame my parents because they taught me what they were taught.
Yes.
Back those days, you couldn't speak mental health. You could not say, and they were going through trauma and they just didn't know it, right? And they taught me what their parents taught them, and that lineage continued. And I said, it stops with me. So we tell our son, talk to us. He came home the other day and he said, Dad, just want to let you know, I got in trouble. I could never tell my parents that. Woo! And I was like, okay, son, let's sit down and figure out why and what happened. And so we talk. I said, okay, so maybe now we can adjust this the next day you go back to school and try not doing that. So he's not afraid to come and talk to us. He's not afraid to tell us, jokingly, we were joking with him, but he told us that there was a girl that was teasing him because him and some boy, they blew a kiss to each other. And so the girl called him a name. And so I didn't yell at him. I just talked to him. But I would have gotten yelled at. I would have gotten beat. So I think that is the difference that I love about it is we allow him grace to make mistakes. And he knows he's still getting punishment or he'll get, the game taken away or something. But he's not afraid of us. He's not afraid to come and say, Dad, I don't understand how this works. I need help. And as long as he can ask for help with us, I know he'll be able to do it with the world if he needs it.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliant. And I like the learnings you've taken from that. And I think this piece again, and I think a lot of us of the age we are at have to make peace with the exception of child abuse and real cruelty, is most parents were doing the best they could with what they had.
Yes. And that's one of the things, my screen just switched, but that's one of the things that it took me a long time to learn.
Yes.
And my aunt, she continuously tells me, she's like, you should write a book. Because, in my life, again, it's one of those things where it's so traumatic and, we won't probably get too deep into this because I know we're in a time thing, but most people who know, I was clinically dead twice. And I was, as a kid, a millionaire. Not me, but my parents. But then what's crazy is I have a signature and we have shirts and everything, and it's called Broke Millionaire. right? Because I became a millionaire myself. And then I lost it, right? Because, and it was the money trauma. I did not know how it affected me as a kid. I saw my parents spend and everything. And I made money and I spent and I made bad investments. And I just, because I was not knowledgeable about it, right?
Yes.
But then that led me to the point of learning that memories over money. It's more important for my family time, right? I still want some money because I need to do things with money to be able to do the fun things with the family. But yeah, that's one of the most important things for me to this day, is because I want to make a change in the world, but I want to do that by being who I am, if that makes sense. And I love it. And man, I get a little teary-eyed right now. Well, like that right there. I apologize. Like that right there. I could have never said that I'm getting teary-eyed. I could have never said that I was about to cry, because Black men don't cry. Yes, we do. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, if you're African American anywhere in the world, we cry, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely not. And I've thoroughly enjoyed having you on the podcast. This has been a really wonderful, enlightening, and interesting conversation, Lion. So I'm so grateful for you being here and sharing. And I believe you have a 3-day challenge coming up. I wish listeners could see the screen here. Lion has the most amazing screen with memes that pop up and everything else. It's like a full visual experience. You have a free 3-day challenge coming up. Tell us a little bit more about that and where people can find you, because I am pretty sure after this conversation, people are going to want to be connecting with you.
Thank you so much. Yes. So the 3-day challenge, what I thought of doing is this, because kind of like what you said, the visuals and everything. And I would get so many questions from people when I would go into Zoom meetings or whatever. And people, how's that coming on your screen? Why does your screen look different? And I didn't put it together right away. And I was like, but I would answer the questions. And then someone said, why don't you teach them how or why that happened? And I was like, oh, yeah, I could do that. And so it kind of just was born out of that. And what that came from is people, they said, afraid of public speaking, right? That's one of the worst fears that people have.
Yeah, that and death.
Work with a culture. Yeah, right. And then they work with a coach and they work with someone to kind of help them get along with it. And then the virtual world hit us. And I was like, oh, now everyone's virtual, but people don't know where to put their hands. They don't know how to sit. They don't know what background to put and so forth. And so I said, okay, well, I can do a simple thing to show people how to get over the anxiety by giving them basically standard operating procedures, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3. The rule of thirds, kind of like what you saw earlier. And if you feel confident, then you will show up on camera better, right? You will show up to say, I can have a meeting. I can go on and present my course, my presentation. And so that's what it is. It's just 3 days of us getting on. Each day you're going to have an assignment and you will get on camera. You will have to put your recording into the group, and then we work to critique to help each other get better. Because like we said, it is a safe place to be a little dangerous, right? It's all about helping with that. And so that's the primary goal of that, is to start getting you to the point whereas you can show up on camera. And it doesn't have to be elaborate, kind of like what you may see with mine. It could be a simple thing. But the first step is just taking that step in that journey. So that's what the 3-day getting comfy on camera challenge will be. Just us coming in together, working on small little things, working on voice, working on tonality, maybe just talking in one way. And then all of a sudden you get excited about something. That's how you keep the listener saying, oh, okay, he's not or she's not just talking in a monotone thing and telling a story. And all of a sudden, I want to tell you the story about what happened to me as a kid. And I want to, those little things that we're going to work on. Pace. How I'm not just talking and I'm telling everybody about a story that's happening to me in it. No, I want you to slow down. I want you to be deliberate about a certain part of the story. I want you to make the listener have memories, almost like a movie, have memories, and they can visualize what's happening as you're telling that story, right? So yeah, little things like that. That's what we're going to do. And people can find me all across the world at Black Negus. That's BLKNEGUS, which means Black King, Black Royalty. That's what the word actually means. I'm never ashamed. I'm proud of my heritage, of who I am. But you can find me on all the social medias like that. or email lion@lionfludd.com, lion@lionfludd.com.
Brilliant. Thank you. We will put the links in the show notes to all of your sites and socials and to the challenge as well. So people can sign up, jump in and enjoy what sounds like it's going to be thoroughly entertaining 3-day challenge with you. Lion, thank you very much for being with me here today. I've really, really enjoyed this. I'm feeling really left out with not having a screen with all these lovely animations on. So maybe I might jump into your challenge as well and learn some of your podcasting tricks here. Brilliant. But thank you very much for your time. And thank you for sharing openly your story and sharing your thoughts. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It means a lot for you to have a space like this where people can come and voice and talk, and you allowing the world to hear this. That means a lot. And I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lion. And thanks everybody for listening today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I've enjoyed recording it, and I will see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please share with your friends and be sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. To find out more about my one-on-one coaching, please visit my website, which is emmaobriencoach.com. And remember, folks, when life gives you lemons, you can always choose another fruit. See you next time.